Hi, I'm Tanner Olson, and this is episode 4 of Walk a Little Slower, a podcast where I share a little hope, a little love, and a little bit of what I've been learning. This is a podcast where you are invited to slow down, to lean in, to hold fast, and to eventually keep going. Welcome. Before we jump into this episode, I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this podcast. Truly, your feedback has been overwhelming. I'm really glad that y'all are connecting with this podcast. At the end of this episode is a poem written and read by my friend Chris West. I was recently on Chris's podcast, FaithXArt, talking about writing and poetry. On his podcast, we swapped poems, and I loved the poem that he shared. I asked Chris to record it so it could feature it on this podcast. You can find Chris on Instagram at chris.on.a.quest, quest with a W, which is linked in the description of this podcast. His podcast is also linked in the show notes as well. I'm looking forward to showcasing more writers and poets. If you'd like to be featured, send me a message at writtentospeak@gmail.com. All right, here is episode 4 of Walk a Little Slower. I'm not good at sleeping. Once upon a time I was, but not anymore. It's been like this since college. Maybe I've trained myself to wake up early. And when I first created Written to Speak, I would intentionally wake up early to write. My alarm would go off around 4:30 or 5, and I'd spend the first 2 hours of the day writing while I sipped awful coffee from a Mr. Coffee that made 6 cups at a time. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment a few miles from downtown St. Louis. The wooden floors cracked and sometimes cut the bottoms of my feet. I had 2 front doors and a kitchen the size of a closet. My first purchase was a couch. It was red and big and fluffy. I named her Red Ireland. It's a strange thing to name a couch, but sometimes I'd leave events early because I had to go see my friend Red. No one asked questions, they just thought it was an awesome name, and it was. I was afraid to sleep in the bedroom by myself, so I slept in the living room by myself with the glow of the TV lighting up my dreams. Needless to say, I slept horribly and my back is now all jacked up. As the sun would make its way above, I'd attempt to write something worth sharing. It was in that 1-bedroom apartment that I started calling myself a writer. I would write and write and write. And truthfully, I wrote a lot of terrible things in that apartment. I did write the poems I Wish I Would Have Known and Matthew while living there, and those two hold a special place in my heart. There were days when I missed those early days of being a writer. I was lost and hopeful and scared. Everything in life felt clunky, but I was confident and stubborn and ready for Oprah to interview me about how I was able to rhyme light with night. At the time, nothing in life seemed to be going right. Every road I walked down was an eventual dead end. I got fired from my first job, which I talked about in episode 3. I broke up with a girl because I didn't want her to date a guy who didn't have a job. I spent a lot of time wrestling depression and the questions that kept me awake or woke me up early. But I would also treat myself to a cup of black coffee and a blueberry muffin on Saturday mornings. I belonged to a church that loved me and encouraged me and invited me to be me. Most afternoons, I'd run to the zoo and go see the lions, and throughout the week, I'd talk on the phone with Kevin and Trevor and my mom for hours. I was slowly becoming myself. I was slowly healing. I was slowly learning. I guess this was living, or something like that. The other morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. after I dreamed I was thrown in jail. I'm not sure why I was in jail, but I was, and I wanted out. So I woke up. I guess that's the nice thing about bad dreams. You can wake up. But then you're awake. I rolled out of bed and Pancake, our dog, he followed me. I sat in my office and I read Romans 1 and Hebrews 1. I prayed out loud. It was a whisper, but God heard me. I'm sure of it. I thanked him for a new day, but made sure to mention it started just a little bit early. I think he would have liked to tell me how long he's been awake for, but spared me this time. I prayed for the same few things I've been praying for. And then I prayed for them with different words. And then again with new words. and then again with silence. Silence seems to say it all. I prayed for you. I asked for forgiveness and then deleted half of my inbox and useless files on my computer. I love the sound the computer makes when you put something in a trash can and click empty trash. Maybe that's the same sound God hears when our sins are forgiven. I wrote something repetitive, but what's new? I wrote something repetitive, but what's new? And then I wrote a short poem about when the unexpected happens. I made a note to revise and edit the words later on. I'm always revising. I'm always editing. My words, my life, my goals, my finances, my sins, my to-do list, my sleeping habits. Revise, edit. Revise, edit. I closed my computer and opened the blinds in the living room. I sat on the couch and watched the sun begin to make its way over the houses across the street. Pancake and I moved to the window and saw the colors of the sky swirl with pinks and blues and yellows. The sunrise is free, but I'd still pay to see it. Maybe this is what I woke up early for. My silence met with his silence. The sunrise didn't need revising or editing. It was perfect just the way it was. I told God this, but I'm sure he will change it up again tomorrow. And I'll probably be awake to see it.
I'm Chris West from Garner, North Carolina, and this is my poem, A Sign of Resurrection. Last summer, I watched 6 consecutive episodes of American Pickers. Caught up in a wave of inspiration, I went rustling up artifacts of a past well dusted over in the once white and glossy, but now old, cold, and broken tobacco barn on the back acre of the property. Expecting as one does when digging in abandoned places to find treasure buried there. Instead, all I found was cobwebs and 2 decayed copperhead skins, shed and long abandoned like the piles of weathered wood, broken farm tools, and dry pine straw that lined the creaky floor. Then I saw it sitting on an old metal table below a pile of wooden wire baskets that once carried all manner of fresh produce from the field. I saw at first the corner protruding, but I knew instantly what I had uncovered. A sign, hand-painted, fresh vegetables sold here. Now, fiscally speaking, the sign was worthless. Some might even say less than worthless because of the splinters it gave me and the space it now wastes sitting on the back porch beside the washer that only works when it wants to. But it was worth it to see the look on Granny's face when she saw her husband's handwriting painted on that once white, now faded sign, the rush of memories flooding into that kitchen like a pop-up rainstorm in late summer, the gone and buried, now resurrected in red letters. See, he too has been covered by dirt for almost as long as that sign. We live in a world of magic where some artifacts have the power to call the sleeping to wake and the lame to walk. In this world, old signs can talk, and they have accents that say words like y'all and add syllables in places that don't quite make sense and drop letters like confetti. Objects that can bring back that which was thought to be lost to time. What was buried under broken wire baskets and dust now sits on the back porch next to that almost broken washer. Here, in this world of magic, signs give hope. A daily reminder that nothing stays gone forever. You see, in this world, the dead do not stay that way for long. There's something holy about old signs and recovering lost things. Handwriting and tears, stories told from rocking chairs, sweet tea and even sweeter memories. Dusty barns, buried things, and meaningless cable TV. I've since retired from picking, but not from pondering. What else might be buried there? What all might yet find new life in a home next to Granddaddy's sign, just beneath the busy contents of that barn. Perhaps one day I'll dig there again.
Again, that was a poem by Chris West. Make sure you check out the show notes to follow him on Instagram and to check out his podcast as well. Thank you for listening to episode 4 of Walk a Little Slower. If you have a question that you would like to submit, send it to writtentospeak@gmail.com, or you can find me on the internet. You can follow me at writtentospeak and send me a direct message there, or you can always check out my website, writtentospeak.com. If you would like to support this podcast and my ministry, visit patreon.com/writtentospeak to become a patron. Your monthly donation allows me to spread hope and announce love through written and spoken word, just like this podcast. You are also invited to subscribe and share this episode of Walk a Little Slower. You can leave a 5-star review if you like. Reviews and ratings help share this podcast with others so they can see that this podcast isn't the worst. As always, thanks for joining me on this episode. I'll be back next week with another one. Here is to walking a little slower.